So what does foreclosure look like in our community? Obviously, it looks like a single mother, someone who was making payments faithfully, but hours got cut at the hospital or at the job, and just couldn't continue. Did the best she could for 3, 4, 5 months, but slowly but surely started to get behind. And all of a sudden, she's starting to get those letters in the mail and those phone calls saying, hey, you got to pay up. It also looks like those working families who, usually same type of situation. Working hard, but maybe 2 incomes or even 3 incomes in some cases. We're paying for that, helping to pay for that mortgage. One of them lost a job. All of these types of issues we're seeing in our communities throughout northeastern Pennsylvania. Don't be surprised, but foreclosure is looking more like this in our community as well. Houses that are typically middle to upper income, folks who just may have when the economy was good, when the housing market was good, decided to kind of buy up and stretch a little bit to get that dream home or that larger property, and the bottom just fell out. I mean, the bottom of the market just fell out. People have been laid off. Nobody's buying that home that they need to buy, that this family needs them to buy in order to get back on their feet. So really, one important thing for us all to understand is foreclosure, it's not affecting a specific group of people. It's not just a low-income issue. It's not just a medium income. It's not just a upper income issue. It affects everybody in our community. And we don't want any stigmas attached to who's going through this issue, because trust me, just in the last week, we've had people come through our door in Scranton, from people at just above poverty level who couldn't pay, their mortgage or were just struggling, to people with $1 million houses. And so it doesn't really matter who you are or what your background is, where you're coming from, what type of work you have. This is affecting everybody in our community. And so the important thing is we need to respond as a community, not just focus on one group, but we need to respond as an entire community. So what are some strategies? Again, I'm still talking big picture, and I hope you hang with me, but what are some strategies for mitigating or tempering the effects of foreclosure in a community? Number one, we need to reach troubled homeowners. We need to reach people that are going through this issue with workshops just like this one, and tell them, there is something you can do. And a lot of times, things can be done to help you out of this situation or through it or whatever we need to do. We just need to get people to understand that they have to take action, that they have to be proactive about their own personal situation and find some help. And part of the strategy from a community standpoint is to reach out and let people know that there are programs, there are ways to find assistance. They're almost always free of charge to the borrower who's facing this issue. But we need to let people know, about these programs and what can be done. We need to educate the community. Again, that's kind of what we're doing today. We're talking about the issue in a big picture. We're saying, this issue doesn't just affect the family who's going through it, although they're the most important part of this issue. It does affect the neighbor next door, and it affects the household that's a block away from that family, and it affects the entire community. And we'll talk a little bit more about why in just a minute. We need to employ effective individual foreclosure mitigation counseling service. That's a big, long caption of or way to say we need to help people directly. We need to get counselors in touch with homeowners who are going through this issue, so that counselor can sit right next to you. They can look at your information in your mortgage, they can look at your debt, they can look at your income and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. And put the game plan together, talk with the lender, and deal with the issue. But we need counselors, we need foreclosure counselors, people experiencing this type of work to be available to do that for people. So that's a big part of how we deal with this on a regional level. And we need to stabilize the neighborhoods. So if we have a lot of foreclosures in one specific area, South Scranton is a place that there's been a lot of foreclosures. I know Pike County, Monroe County, other pockets have been hit. Well, it's a big problem. Let me tell you, it's a big problem when there's a lot of properties that are vacant or foreclosed in one area. that really affects all the surrounding property values. It affects everybody else in that area. We need to go in there, we need to get those properties back on the market, we need to get them sold to families who are going to be investing in that neighborhood instead of just leaving things kind of vacant and letting it go, because we all know we don't want our neighborhoods to look like that. Very quickly, subprime math. This is just a slide that kind of shows what the cost is, or what the cost could be to a community for one foreclosure versus what it costs to prevent a foreclosure. So you compare these two numbers, you see it makes a lot of sense to go out there and try to get people to take early action so we can not go through the foreclosure process, because foreclosures are very expensive. And it's important to point out, they're not just expensive for you or me, the borrower, who's going through it. They're expensive for the lender. The person who has your loan, many times that lender is going to lose a lot of money if they have to foreclose on your house. And so one of the biggest myths that we want to just totally obliterate right now is that you need to hide from your lender if you're going through this. 9 times out of 10, your lender wants to hear from you, wants to know what's going on, because they don't want to have to foreclose. It's expensive for them. It costs them a lot of money to pay that attorney. It costs a lot of money to have that attorney go to court and file paperwork. It costs them a lot of money to spend all that time on the phone trying to track you down. So and not to mention, when the loan's actually sold at a sheriff's sale, they don't even know if they're going to get their money back when they sell that property. So most lenders, I'll say this, I have to say most, because some, they're just kind of oblivious to what's going on. But most lenders, especially at this point, they have so many foreclosures on their books, they don't want another one. They don't want your house. They don't want your house. And so it costs them money. It costs local government money. You know, we're sitting here in the Pike County Administration Building. Pike County doesn't want you to go through foreclosure too. That's why they're taking some of these steps to let people know what can be done. It costs them money. They lose tax base if that house is vacant. You know, there's other costs associated with that foreclosed property. They don't want that to happen. Most importantly, this is something that everybody should be aware of: property values, surrounding property values. If your neighbor is going through foreclosure and you're not, and you're saying, well, that's his problem or that's her problem, well, you need to wake up right now, because it's your problem. Because as soon as their property goes under foreclosure and it's sitting there vacant and they can't sell it, what do you think is going to happen to your property value? It's going to come right down. It's going to come right down. And that's going to affect your bottom line, your budget. So that's why we're saying, even if you're not the one going through this issue, if you know somebody who is, get them into some help them find some assistance, because you know what? It's going to help you, it's going to help the entire community to save some money, and it's going to keep the property values where they should be in your community. The cost to prevent foreclosure, generally $1,500 to $3,000. What does that mean? Well, that means that, you know, somebody has to pay for me to come out here and do this. Somebody has to pay for our counselor staff, or Mike's salary, or Teddy's salary to come out and help people deal with this issue. But when you look at the numbers, it's generally not very much of a comparison when you're talking about numbers. We're coming out here and trying to help people avoid it, and that's relatively cheap compared to the amount of money that goes into a foreclosure and what the effects are on the community. Teddy, Michael, attorney, Esquire extraordinaire, is going to talk to you a little bit about the foreclosure process. And it's important for us to understand what the process is. And Teddy's going to talk specifically about the time that you have. If this is something you're going through, we have many people that come to us and come to him and come to Mike and say, you know, I got this notice that I'm going to be in foreclosure. You know, do I have to move out next week, or what happens? And Teddy's going to talk to you a little bit about what that means and what time you have to work with so you can take advantage of it.
Sure.
Teddy?
Let's go off camera for a second quick.